Good afternoon, everybody. If you guys can come to the front, take your seats. We are going to get started with Amy Sweezey's wonderful, magnificent presentation of the 2025 hurricane season. So if everybody can come to the front, thank you.
She wants this. Good morning, Orange County. Good morning. So I am Laura Lee Avery. I am your Orange County Emergency Manager, and it is a pleasure to see all of you here at our 2025 Hurricane Expo. So I am going to introduce Miss Amy Sweezey. We have the honor of having her. We have the honor of having Amy Sweezey here, a local meteorologist, to give us a upcoming forecast for the current hurricane season. So will you help me welcome, please, Amy Sweezey.
How about we just use this mic? Way better. Sorry about that. I don't think it likes this one. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for being here once again. I am so happy to be part of this event. I've lost track of the number of years that we've done this, rotating to different high schools across Orange County, but I'm super happy to be with you today. I know it's difficult for the folks who are roaming around. Maybe you can kind of hear this, maybe you can't. But here's the cool thing. We are actually broadcasting live on Orange TV right now, and this broadcast will later be uploaded to YouTube. So if you are working and you just kind of sort of hear this in the background and you can't quite hear all the information today, you can just tune in to find the Orange TV YouTube channel later, and you'll be able to watch this video and get your update for the 2025 hurricane season. So for those of you who don't know me, if you've moved to Central Florida just within the last 5 years, you may not know me, but I used to be a full-time meteorologist at the NBC station here in Orlando, WESH 2. I worked there for 18 years, and then when I left there in 2020, I started freelancing for a couple of different TV stations and other groups working with weather. I work with Spectrum News 13 now on occasion. I work with Carnival Cruise Line and do some weather work with them. So I have several different hats that I wear now, but one of my most fun jobs is working with Orange TV and, of course, with Orange County government. So what we're going to talk about today is the 2025 hurricane season, and just kind of give you a little bit of an update so that you can be prepared for what we have in store for this year. First of all, every hurricane season starts June 1st and it runs through November 30th. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only time we have hurricanes. It just means that that's the time where hurricanes are most likely. In fact, we've had hurricanes every single month of the year even in January, even in February, tropical systems have formed. But it's just that between June 1st and November 30th, that is when they are most common. The reason they're most common is because that's when we have the warmest water in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, and it's when we have the lowest wind shear. That's a fancy weather word for the wind that's up high in the atmosphere. You have wind down here that you feel as you're standing on the ground and you see the trees blowing, but the wind is blowing at all different levels up into the sky and up into the atmosphere. And so the winds way up high, when they're really, really strong, as a hurricane tries to grow and build, those strong winds rip the top of that hurricane off and apart and won't let it intensify as much. When we have lower wind shear and those winds up high aren't as strong, that allows that hurricane to grow and build, and that area of low pressure can kind of get going, and then that's when we can get tropical systems and hurricanes that form. Obviously, it's only June 21st today. We haven't even had any tropical systems form so far this year. If this was wood, I would knock on it. But we're doing this expo now so that you can prepare early so that you don't have to panic later. There's always a mad rush at all of the stores when a hurricane is on its way and everything's sold out and everybody's panicking. So if you have your supplies and everything, your information that you need now, there's no need to panic and get freaked out later when a storm is actually headed our way. Now, for those of you who are sitting here up front, how many of you, this is your very first hurricane season in Central Florida? Any newbies? Oh, your first expo. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you're here to get this information today. So some of this is information you've maybe already heard if you've lived here a long time. A lot of times it's just a really good idea to get renewed in your mind to remember, oh, right, I forgot about that. I need to remember to do this or put that on my to-do list or on my grocery list. This year, the probability from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or what we call NOAA, is that we have a 60% chance of an above normal season. What does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about that. 30% chance of a near normal season and a 10% chance of below normal. So why is NOAA and the Hurricane Center talking about an above normal season? There's a couple of factors that go into this, and this is what they look for to say, okay, we're probably going to have more storms than usual this year, and then some years we have less storms than usual. The factors for this year for the above normal season are these. First of all, this is a big weather phrase that if you're not a big weather geek like some of us in this room is not going to mean much to you, but it is a continued neutral ENSO conditions. What the heck is that? Well, what you've probably heard of is El Nino and La Nina, right? We talk about those on the news all the time and in weather. That has to do with the temperature of the water off the coast of South America. So when the water's warmer than normal there, or when the water is cooler than normal there, it has an impact on hurricane season over by Florida. I know it seems weird. It's nowhere near us, but that just goes to show how the interactions between the atmosphere and the ocean all across the entire world have an impact on what happens with our season in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Atlantic Ocean. So one of the things we have is a neutral pattern, which means we don't have a La Nina, we don't have a La Nina, we have neutral. The temperature, the water temperature off the coast of South America is about normal. And we'll talk a little more about that. We also have weaker wind shear this year to inhibit the storms. Remember, we talked about that. That wind shear is weaker. Some years it's really strong, and so we know that that's going to help rip apart the hurricanes. We don't have that this year. We have above average ocean water temperatures. A hurricane needs warm water to grow. That's its food. And we have a stronger African monsoon. Over in Africa, monsoon, that's their season where they get the storms and the rain. There's going to be a strong monsoon season, which means, remember those areas of low pressure that come off of Africa and they travel all across the ocean, and guess what happens? A lot of times if they have the right conditions, they will grow into a tropical system or a hurricane and make their way closer to Florida. So all four of those things taken into account are the reason that NOAA has said, okay, we're going to have a 60% chance of an above normal season. Well, what does that mean? Here's the numbers. On average, over the last 20 years, between 1991 and 2020, when you go through and you count up all the storms that we've had and then you average them out, we get an average of 14 named storms in a season. Of those 14, 7 become hurricanes, and of those 7, 3 reach major Category 3 status. The column in the middle is the forecast, the hurricane forecast from Colorado State University. This was put out in April. They updated it again in early June and didn't change the numbers. And Colorado State is one of the main organizations that does a hurricane forecast every year. And they're calling for 17 named storms instead of 14. So you'll notice their forecast is for above average as well. 9 of those would reach hurricane status, and 4 of those 9 would become major hurricanes. The column on the far right is the NOAA-issued forecast, and that's the National Hurricane Center's parent organization. They always do a range, so they're calling for 13 to 19 named storms. 6 to 10 would be hurricanes, 3 to 5 would be major. At the end of the day, do the numbers mean anything? Not really, right? It doesn't really matter, because here's the thing. Even if we have 25 storms, way above average, we run out of names on the list and we have to go into the secondary list of names, if not one of them comes to Florida, I don't think there's going to be anybody complaining too much about 25 or 28 storms, right? But if we have a below average season and say only 10 storms form, but 4 of those come to Central Florida, guess what? We had an above average season. So this is interesting. It's cool to know. It's good information to help you prepare. But at the end of the day, as we always say, every meteorologist who's visiting today and that's in this room will say, it only takes one. You'll hear us say it a million times because that's the deal. So that's what you're preparing for, is the possibility of that one. This is the list of names for this year. Yes, they are predetermined. We don't get to pick them. People always look and say, well, when are you going to put my name on the list? Quite frankly, I never want there to be a Hurricane Amy, so I'm good that there's never been an Amy on the list. But these are determined by the World Meteorological Organization. So it's a bunch of world Mets that get together, meteorologists that get together and put together these lists of names. There are 6 of them, and they rotate every 6 years. So this list is actually the exact same names that we had back in 2019. If some of them look familiar, that's why, if you lived in Central Florida then or in a hurricane-prone area. Dorian, though, happened in 2019. Do you guys remember Dorian? Dorian was that really scary hurricane that sat off of Miami for a couple of days, and everyone was just sure that it was going to devastate our state. The forecast for Dorian was so good, and it never called for that storm to hit us. It skirted right up the coast, but it did do major devastation in the Bahamas because it sat over some of those really small islands for hours. Because of that, Dorian was retired. The name was retired from that list, and so now they've replaced it with Dexter. If any of you watch the show Dexter, that makes me a little nervous. There is also an alternate list of names. We used to use the Greek alphabet before 2021, but it got super confusing because not everybody knows the Greek alphabet. It doesn't really go in the same alphabetical order that our alphabet goes in, so it gets a little confusing. So this list was created in 2021, and it's only used if there's more than 21 names. So let's hope and pray we don't need to use this list for a very long time, but we have had more than 21 storms in the past years, and so it is a possibility that we could have to use this list instead. The peak of hurricane season happens September 10th. Notice on this graphic, though, how the peak kind of goes up, and then it doesn't just immediately go down. The peak slowly goes down across October and November. And if you've lived here the last couple of years, you know that both Ian and Nicole in 23 happened in October and November, after the peak of the season. Last year, Milton happened after the peak of the season, Helene and Milton. So just because that's the peak of the season on September 10th doesn't mean we don't have storms the rest of the time, but it just means that you're going to start hearing more and more talk about storms developing once we get into, say, mid-August all the way through about mid-October. So that's kind of when you really need to be paying attention. I want to go over just a couple of tropical definitions because this is probably one of the biggest questions I get, and especially because if you're watching a meteorologist on TV or you're listening on the radio, you're going to the National Hurricane Center website, and you see them talk about some of these things, we forget that everybody doesn't know what they are because this is what we do every day. So we're like, we just say, oh yeah, there's an invest. Have you heard of an invest? People are like, what the heck is an invest? I've never heard of an invest. An invest is basically just an area that the National Hurricane Center is investigating. That's all it means. They're running some computer models on it. They're collecting data. There's no tropical system that has formed yet. There's no hurricane. It's just an area of investigation. It may not ever form. That's when you maybe watch TV and you see the map with all the clouds across the Atlantic, and you'll see a couple of circles. And they'll be like, okay, there's an area of investigation, there's an area of investigation. We're just watching, just keeping an eye out. Those get numbered 90 through 99. L is because it's in the Atlantic. And so it'll be, we have Invest 90L. The next one will be 91, 92, all the way up to 99, and then we start over again if there's another one back to 90. So they just have a number, that's all it means. The next one, though, is a tropical disturbance. This will be shown on everybody's TV weather map in a different way. Most often it's just this area of low pressure. Sometimes it might be like just a big area that will circle, but often it's an L, and that's when this area of investigation stays organized for 24 hours straight. And that organized just means it starts wrapping around in a circle, because that's what areas of low pressure do. The wind kind of wraps around, and so once that holds together as an actual storm system for 24 hours, it's labeled a disturbance. Still doesn't have a name, still not a hurricane, may not form into a tropical storm, but this is a disturbance. Once that organized system is together for 24 hours and the winds start to increase and get up to 38 miles per hour, now it's a tropical depression. You might see the TV people refer to it as a TD. They'll just abbreviate it, TD, and this one gets a number. So TD1 will be the first tropical depression of the season, then TD2, TD3. So it goes all the way through. We could have 100, hopefully not, but the numbers just keep going up. They never start over. The Hurricane Center, once we get to a depression, they start issuing advisories on tropical depressions, and they will actually send out like a cone and what we're thinking, and they'll kind of put this information there. You get a little more information once a storm becomes a depression. If that depression then starts to increase even more and grow and build, and the winds get up to 39 miles per hour, now it's officially a tropical storm, and that's when it gets assigned a name. The name comes off the list. Whatever the next name is, they just take that name off the list, and that gets slapped on this storm, and that storm will be called that name for the duration. If it falls apart, it will just forever be Tropical Storm Andrea. If it becomes a hurricane, it would get upgraded to Hurricane Andrea. And of course, a hurricane is when the winds are at least 74 miles per hour. So that's kind of the way that the progression of how these storms will develop and some of the names that you might hear on TV. Now, once it gets to a hurricane and the winds are 74, it can go up from there to different categories. And these are the categories 1 through 5, and those are the wind speeds in miles per hour. So anything from 74 to 95 miles per hour is considered a category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. We used to have winds and pressure. You hear about the pressure dropping, and it's the hurricane's bombing out. You'll hear people say it's bombing out because the pressure's dropping so quickly. Those two things used to be measured with the Saffir-Simpson scale. They had to separate those two things because sometimes we get winds of a Cat 1 but pressure of a Cat 2. And it's like, okay, well then what is it? And there was a lot of confusion. So now the categories are only wind-based, and either that wind is measured from a hurricane hunter plane that goes up and flies into the storm, or it might be satellite observations from satellites that are up in space, or it could be observations close to the coast, as long as it's a weaker hurricane and the wind sensor, the anemometer doesn't get blown away when the winds are super strong. I should mention there's only 5 categories. You will see on social media from what we like to call the meteorologists, LOL. There's a whole lot of fake accounts out there, guys. So please be careful what you follow and what you share. Because if you see somebody that says, we got a Cat 6, please don't share that post. There is no Cat 6. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's fake news. And it's going to get shared 10,000 times. And whoever created that is going to make hundreds of dollars because those pages are monetized. And every time you share that fake stuff, not only do you spread misinformation, but those people get paid. They're making money off of you sharing because they're trying to scare you, right? Here's the deal. The reason there is no Cat 6, once you get to 157 mile per hour winds, you basically have complete devastation. Everything's gone. So Whether it's 157 or 165 or 180, it's complete devastation. So you don't really need a category beyond a Cat 5. So those are your categories. Let's hope we don't have any of those this year. I have to mention the computer models because this is a question that I get a lot. You will see these on TV, you will see them shared on social media like crazy. And the number one question that people always say is, which line should I look at? Is it the yellow? Is it the red? Is it the black? Like, what model is the truth? Here's the deal. When computer models were first introduced, that's the word, introduced, they were not meant for public viewing. That's why they're confusing, because if you haven't studied meteorology and you don't know what the models mean, you want to know which line it is, right? That is completely logical and makes sense. But that's not really the right question, because here's the thing with the computer models. Here's what they do. First of all, they do look like a pile of spaghetti, which is why sometimes you'll hear them called the spaghetti models, because sometimes they don't look like a nice little line. They're all like flopped all over and swirling around. So we call them spaghetti models. They show where a tropical system may go. Not where it will go, not what's going to happen, just where it may go. And look at that. This storm may go all the way down to the western tip of Cuba, or it may go all the way up to North Carolina. Computer models help provide forecast confidence when they're tightly clustered. So notice how those models are all clustered together over Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There's pretty good agreement among those computer models that that's where that storm is going to go. But as you go out a few days in time, look how broad and wide those models are. That's because there is not a lot of confidence of where that storm is going to go beyond those first couple of days over Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The purpose of the computer models, what they do is to provide a forecaster guidance, people who know the difference between the biases and all the different purposes. All the models do different things. So I can't tell you that the yellow line or the red line or the black line, because they all do different things for different kinds of storms at different times of the year. Some of the models work really well on small storms. Some of them work really well on big, strong storms. Some work really well at the beginning of a season. Some work really well at the end of the season. Some don't work very well at all. Usually I'm going to trust the Canadian computer model really strongly when it comes to a blizzard or a snowstorm. I'm not going to trust the Canadian model so much when it comes to tropical weather. You know what I mean? Because their parameters are a little bit different. It's not people, it's computers, it's models. It's just numbers that get put into a machine and it spits out this information with the models. So that's what they do, and that's the purpose of them. Here's what models don't do. If you see a pile of spaghetti on a map and you share it and you see somebody sharing it, they don't explain at all where the impacts are going to be felt. Can you look at that map and tell me where we're going to get wind or rain? Well, somewhere on the East Coast, maybe Florida, maybe Georgia, maybe Maine, right? The models don't explain what impacts will be felt. The models don't tell you, is the wind going to be 36 miles per hour, or is the wind going to be 136 miles per hour? It doesn't tell me if I'm going to get rain for an inch or 12 inches of rain. It doesn't say if I'm going to get rain and wind for 6 hours, or am I going to get wind and rain for 6 days. Just looking at these lines doesn't really tell you anything about where or what the impacts will be. The computer models also do not forecast a tropical system. This is the biggest misconception, the biggest misunderstanding when it comes to the computer models, is they're not a forecast. The reason we have the models is so that the meteorologists can take all of them and look at all of them and then come up with a forecast. That is not the forecast in and of itself. That's just helping us put together our forecast. And the other thing that the computer models, at least yet, cannot do, now that we have AI, we'll see what happens, they can't out-forecast a real human meteorologist. Because, again, it's just a computer model. It's just a line. And I don't have to tell any of you who've looked at your phone app that has told you that there's a, 86% chance of rain, and then you don't get a drop. Because, remember, your app on your phone is just a computer model. And sometimes it's wrong. A lot of times it's wrong. So the models are there for a purpose, and they're wonderful tools, but they're not a forecast. So that's the biggest thing I want you to remember when you see those. This is actually a forecast. This is the forecast cone This comes from the National Hurricane Center's website, and this also is shown on all the TV stations, but we all have different colors and ways of displaying it, right? But it all just looks similar, where you'll see a cone and you'll see the symbols on there and the time frame of when a hurricane is coming. This is an actual forecast. The Hurricane Center takes all of that information and draws the cone by hand. A real human being puts this together, not just one. A whole team of meteorologists and forecasters at the National Hurricane Center spend hours poring over this information and the models and what's coming back, the data that's coming back from the hurricane hunters to put this cone together. The forecast cone still doesn't show though where impacts are going to be, right? It just shows where the center of a storm is expected to track. I want you to think about that. There are so many times that people will look at that cone and say, oh, I live in Miami, I'm in the clear, right? Because it looks like it's just, oh, it's going to Tampa. Ooh, we're good in Orlando. We don't need to worry about that. But that's not the case. This cone is that same storm, and I took this from a TV station offline of an example of a station that would use this. That white line that you see there across Tampa with that number 2, the center of that storm could be anywhere along that line. So if the center of that storm is all the way over on the left, out in the Gulf, we would get very little except some outer rain bands across the peninsula. But if the center of the storm is all the way over to the right, it's going to likely impact Orlando and Orange County a whole lot more, right? So don't look at that red cone and think just inside that cone is where the storm is going to be. That looks like Port St. Lucie and Miami are all in the clear. It looks like, if you don't know, that that's just representing the center of the storm, not the whole storm. It looks like part of the state is in the clear. So that's where some of the confusion comes. Again, the center of the storm is expected to track. Here's an example of Hurricane Ian back in 2022. That cone I just showed you, that was from Ian. The center of the storm is right where that was forecast to go, inside that line. But look at Miami. Look at Port St. Lucie. They're not in the clear, are they? They still got hit by the storm. In fact, Ian was a Category 4 when it made landfall, and the outer bands of wind and rain covered just about the entire state of Florida. So somebody got something from Ian, some worse than others. Impacts were felt well outside of the cone. The right front quadrant of a hurricane is the worst part. That's the worst place to be when you're in a hurricane. We sometimes call it the dirty side of the hurricane because that is where most of the tornadoes occur. If it's a weak tropical storm or a weak hurricane, we're like, oh, we're good, we're fine. But we forget that so many tornadoes can develop inside of a hurricane, especially the right front quadrant. So what do I mean? It's that area. It's the front of the hurricane, and it's on the right side of the eye. So wherever the eye is where it's moving. The reason these tornadoes happen there is because see which way the hurricane is moving, okay? It's heading toward Florida. So all the storm movement with that wind, however fast it's moving, the wind is going that way. And then you also have the wind that's wrapping around the storm. So the movement of the storm is at the surface, off the ocean and toward the water. But the rain bands, the wind bands that are up, that's up high. So when the wind is going this way, low, and up high it's going this way, that's prime tornado development. That's how we get tornadoes, because the wind shifts direction as you go up in the atmosphere. So when the storm's this way, wind's that way, that's where we get the tornadoes. And in Ian, we had numerous tornadoes that did all kinds of damage in Brevard County, Vero Beach, down toward Miami, and they all thought they were in the clear because they weren't in the cone. So don't see Orange County's not in the cone and think we're good. You still need to keep in mind that that's not exactly what the cone means. Last year, the Hurricane Center put out a new experimental cone to replace the other one. Well, it doesn't really replace it, it enhances it. So you'll notice it's still a similar sort of cone, but look how the state of Florida is now all covered in red and blue. What's happening here is the watches and warnings are now included. The inland watches and warnings are included with the cone. For many years, we would get a cone forecast from the Hurricane Center, and they would just have the watches and warnings at the coast. So you would only see the coastal ones. And we had to wait to get the warnings from the National Weather Service offices. Now they're including the watches and warnings with the cone. It started last year. It is going to continue for this year. This is what it looked like from a TV station where I took it as well. That's the previous cone. See that with the coastal watches and warnings? And now the new cone has the watches and warnings inland. So it's a little bit easier to tell on the new cone that Orange County is going to have some impacts. Or at least we know that Orange County is under a hurricane warning, and now I need to know, okay, what does a hurricane warning mean, and what do I need to do? What are my preparation steps? So this was released last year. NHC issues the coastal watches and warnings. The local National Weather Service offices issue the inland watches and warnings, and our office here for Orange County is in Melbourne. They forecast for Orange County and several other counties all around Central Florida. There is a little coordination. I like to mention this because those of you who are really big weather geeks and you're like on the Hurricane Center website and you're waiting for that update to come out every couple of hours and you want to know what's going on, you'll see the old cone and be like, yeah, Amy lied to me. Just give it a few minutes because they're coordinating. The Hurricane Center is coordinating with the local offices, so it takes a little minute for the local office watches and warnings to then kind of get put in the system. So just kind of keep refreshing your page if you're looking at the Hurricane Center's website, or the TV stations, the same thing will happen. They might show it and only see the coastal, but give it a few minutes. Their systems will get the inland watches and warnings as well, and then you'll be able to see all the information that you need. Since we're talking about watches and warnings, it is very important that I tell you, here in Central Florida, most of us are pretty familiar with watches and warnings because summertime, right? Thunderstorm watches and warnings. Most of us know that if it's a watch, it means watch out. Thunderstorms might develop. It's not happening now, but it might in a little bit. And a warning means, yeah, it's happening. If there's a thunderstorm warning, the storm has reached severe levels. Those winds are 58 miles per hour or greater. We've got, bigger hail. We've got it happening right now. Hurricane watches and warnings work a little bit different. It doesn't necessarily mean watch out and it's happening. It's all time-based, okay? So with a watch, this means that the storm conditions, either tropical storm or hurricane conditions, are possible. 48 hours before those winds arrive, that's when the watch will be issued. So even if the Hurricane Center or the TV stations are so confident that this storm is going to be here 50 hours out, they can't issue a watch until it is 48 hours away. That's just the way the government red tape works. That's the rule, okay? At this point, when there is a tropical storm or hurricane watch, is when you need to finish up your home preparations and be ready to go. A warning, same deal. Hurricane and tropical storm conditions are expected, but this one is issued 36 hours out. So when you see a post that's like, breaking news, we now have a hurricane warning. Yeah, we knew that. It was a watch, and now this many hours later, it gets upgraded to a warning. So that's just the structure of the timing of how it works. But once there's a warning, that's when your plans should all be done. You shouldn't be standing in line at Home Depot or Lowe's at that point. Maybe you could still be bringing in your furniture from the outside to make sure that it's not going to blow away and be a projectile. But at the point that you get to 36 hours before, you want to have all your plan in place. Remember these definitions I shared before? I want to share one more with you too, because it has to do with the watches and warnings and the timing of all of this. And it's something that just came about recently in, I think, 2017. Sometimes on TV now you will see, or you'll see on the internet, a potential tropical cyclone. Sometimes we'll just abbreviate it PTC, and it'll get a number 2. PTC1, PTC2, PTC3. It's a disturbance that hasn't formed yet, but it's expected to bring impacts within 48 hours. So this is the way the Hurricane Center can say, look, I'm not allowed to issue a watch because it's 48 hours, but this is for those little storms that spin up right off the coast of Florida, and we know it's going to impact us in 30 hours, but we're not allowed to issue a watch until it's actually formed. But we know it's going to form quickly. It's going to become a tropical storm in 3 hours, and then it's going to become a hurricane. So that's why this is something you really need to pay attention to, because it seems like, oh, it's just potential, right? We're fine, it's just potential. No, this one is the one you probably should pay attention to the most, because this one's going to form quickly. And this one you're going to have a lot less warning for. This was added, the PTC was added in 2017 so that the Hurricane Center could issue these watches and warnings before a storm had actually formed. So hopefully that clears up a little bit of confusion for you on that. So I always like to say, don't be scared, just prepare. If you're a worrywart kind of person, if you get nervous, if hurricanes freak you out, if bad weather is nerve-wracking to you, just prepare. and then you won't have to be scared. I'm going to give you a couple of quick preparation tips, and I'm going to go through these quickly because really the reason you're here today is to go and talk to everyone at these tables that are going to help you get prepared. So some of these things that I'm going to share with you are things that you are already doing today. So pat yourself on the back, give yourself kudos for being here to get prepared for the season. Make sure you've created an emergency plan for your family. Know if you have an evacuation route and what it is. Of course, ocfl.net/storm is a great resource if you have never checked out the county's website for hurricane coverage and where you should go, where the shelters are. Can I bring my pets? Can I not bring my pets? Should I go to a shelter? Those are all the things. Where do I get my sandbags? Find that information out ahead of time. Know where the shelters are and have a communication plan. Phones don't always work. It is so frustrating in a hurricane. Your internet's out at your house, your power's out at your house, and your internet won't work. And so you can't communicate other than to walk outside and try to talk to your neighbors. So have a communication plan of how you will communicate with your family who lives in Illinois and they want to know how you're doing and if you're okay. Figure that out in advance. Build your hurricane kit. That's part of what you're doing here today. Make sure you have a weather radio. You've got water, enough water for 3 people, 3 gallons of water per person per day. Not 3 people, unless you have 3 people at your house. 3 gallons per person. Again, all of this is on the ocfl.net/storm website. Food, non-perishable preferably. Lights, flashlights better than candles so you don't start a fire. Batteries, any medication you might need, a first aid kit, all of those sort of basic things to go in your hurricane kit. Prepare your home. You always have to get your trees trimmed for hurricane season because, boy, those trees, especially have them near your house, they can fall down, and I've had that happen before more than once in Central Florida. Lost quite a few trees in my yard. Bring your outdoor objects in. Make sure your roof window shutters are all good and ready to go. Review your insurance. Please, please, please. My house was impacted by the tornado in Seminole County last March, 3 months ago. And we quickly went through our insurance plan to find out whether or not a pool enclosure is covered, for instance, or go through your plan and make sure you know what is covered and what isn't covered, and know that flood insurance is separate. If your house floods, anybody, Hurricane Ian in 2022, if your house floods, your hurricane insurance does not cover it. You have to have a separate flooding policy. So make sure you know that. So many people get burned by that when a hurricane causes the flooding instead of just an overflowing river. Protect your important documents. I always say get a Rubbermaid bin and some Ziploc baggies. Put your will in there and all your papers in case they get wet. Another good thing is just to save them digitally. If you can get your stuff in the cloud, that way when your papers get wet or ruined. In the tornado in March at my house, some of my neighbors, that their house was completely destroyed across the street in the tornado. Their tax documents, their bank statements, old canceled checks were in my yard, ripped up because their boxes of stuff that they had in their attic or whatever went flying when the hurricane, and it sent it all over into our neighborhood. So just kind of keep those things in mind. Charge your devices and your power sources if the power goes out. To me, that's the biggest thing. If you lose power for 3 days or 5 days, if you don't have a generator, how are you going to eat? How are you going to get on your phone? And if you have kids, how are they going to play their video games? Make sure that stuff is all charged up along with your battery packs and your weather radio. You can prepare your car by filling it with gas, checking your tires, making sure you have an emergency kit in your car as well. And of course, stay informed. Sign up for your alerts. All the TV stations have their own alerts that you can get. The county has alerts. You can go to ocfl.net/storm. And not just weather alerts, but go to your power company. I have Duke Energy where I live, so I have the alerts if power's out in my neighborhood, or any kind of alerts that you can get with whatever you have at your house. Sign up for those. And of course, last but not least, seek out trusted sources. This goes back to making sure you're getting your information from somebody who you can trust and not from some random, whatever, Donovan's Weather Freaks that's got 1 million. Well, if they have 1 million likes, it must be true, right? Actually, if they have 1 million likes, it's more likely not true. So just make sure that you're kind of weeding out that information as we go through the season. Okay, I have taken up so much time, but do you want me? I don't need to take questions. I can. Okay. Oh, okay. So Chief Avery has a microphone. If any of you have a question, we can answer a couple questions. I'm also going to be hanging out over here by the Orange TV table if you want to ask questions. And I know Tony Manolfi's here from Channel 2. David's here from Channel 6. Spectrum is here, not a meteorologist, but a reporter. I don't know if anybody from 9 is here. But anyways, there's lots of meteorologists in this room, too, who can answer your questions as well.
So a couple of years ago, I think it was off Mexico, there was a hurricane that developed went from zero to, and initially I heard that they had never seen it and they didn't know what caused it, but is there any info on that?
I'm thinking maybe that was Matthew. Hurricane Michael. But it went up to the Panhandle.
No, I think it was off
Well,
Mexico.
rapid intensification.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. So rapid intensification happens. It's a real thing. I know some of these things sound like made-up words, but it's where a hurricane intensifies rapidly. And it can quickly go when the water is right, when there's no wind shear, when all the ingredients are just right. A storm can quickly go from a tropical storm all the way up to like a Cat 3 or 4. And I do remember that happening several years ago. It was an M storm. These guys are all busy, but so I think it was maybe Michael, because Matthew was off our coast 3 years ago. And then, so that does happen. I will tell you that the forecasting tools we have now and the forecast from the Hurricane Center are really, really good with location. Like almost always a storm goes in, the center of the storm is inside the cone, right? They're really good with that. The intensification part is the hard part. That's harder. So, and that's why if it's a potential tropical storm, you want to pay attention because those can flare up quickly.
Any other questions? Any other questions from anybody?
They're all introverts, so they're too scared
All
to
right.
ask, and I get that.
Well, let's give her a round of applause for coming out and helping us with the forecast.
Thank you for listening. I know it's hard to hear in here.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
How'd you get that mic to work and not me?
It was over
You
there.
have a different one.
All right, we're going to have Commissioner Uribe come up and say a few words. And then we're going to have the State Florida Division of Emergency Management.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wasn't she amazing? Let's give Amy another round of applause. I'm Myra Uribe, one of your county commissioners, and this event is one of the most exciting events because I get prepared. And one good information that I'd like to set aside that I did not hear Amy say is in my home, we actually have a section in our utility room that has all of our hurricane stuff together. So we have our things for our pets, we have everything for our batteries, we have everything. But what's really, really important is not only to take care of your family, take care of your neighbors. Make sure they're okay and everyone's great. I hope you all are having a great time. Lots of information. I went to every table and I encourage you all to do that too. But let's also give a round of a hand to Chief Avery, who puts this on every year and keeps us safe here in Orange County. I thank you all. I appreciate you all. And we know that together, we're going to make sure we stay safe through this upcoming season. So it's great to see you all. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just have to say that this event would not be...
Chief, one last thing. So one of our wonderful constituents here in Orange County, make sure you stay signed up for newsletters because this is how you find out about what's going on in your communities. I send this stuff. I'm sure all of the commissioners across the county know what's going on in your neighborhood, so you know what's happening in Orange County. Thank you for being here.
All right, and just so you all know, this event would not be possible without my Office of Emergency Management team. So please take a moment sometime today to thank them. They're all over here on the right. And then please thank the vendors for taking time out of their week to be here and support you and making sure that you're prepared for any disaster. So now I'm going to bring up Austin Bealey. He is our Regional 5 Coordinator for the State of Florida Division of Emergency Management. So Austin, turn it over.
Oh, there it is. Do what?
Use this one? The shortest mic for the tallest person right there, I'm telling you.
Awesome.
Orange.
You want to walk around?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I've got some battery-powered, these are battery solar UV. This will charge your phones, and I got a couple questions. We're going to give these away here to my 30 people that are up here real quick. The first one is, can anybody tell me who our director is for the Florida Division of Emergency Management? No, Chief, you cannot answer. Does anybody know who our executive director is for the state? Yes, ma'am. For the prize. Do you know it? Huh? No, not Carlos. I'll tell Carlos he got the promotion, though. So she thinks you're the director of emergency management for the state. So, Carlos, you got a promotion right there. So Kevin Guthrie, Director Guthrie, is our emergency management for our director for the state. All right. So can someone tell me where our weather comes from when it comes from our radar, our local National Weather Service? Where is the office based out of? Melbourne, that's what I heard right there, yes. Melbourne, yes, and Miami. You only get one, though, so, don't be greedy. It's all right. So when it comes to the Florida Division of Emergency Management, what we do is we support the counties. Everything is always locally led and state supported is the way it works. So if Chief Avery sees, or Carlos, if they see something coming at them and Orange County needs a little bit of help, we go ahead, they will call me, they will call my director, and they will say, this is what we need. We will then go ahead and step in from National Guard to water barriers. Maybe they just need bottled water. We go ahead from something as simple to something very, very tall. We can actually have a community field hospital set up if we need one. So it's very extensive what we do. So what office are we under? Who governs what we do? Who is directly underneath? Yes. Huh? The governor. Governor, yes, we are directly under the office of the governor. So Governor DeSantis is the leadership that we go ahead and we fall under. So off the hurricane right now, does anybody, for the last one, can tell me what mission right now FDEM is doing over in Tampa right now? No, Chief. What are we doing right now? We have a mission happening. It's not hurricane related. Can anybody tell us? Huh? Not flooding, no. Yes, ma'am. Not wildlife. Anybody? Not tornado. There's an active emergency right now that Governor has tagged us to do. Not fire. No, I hope nothing's on fire. Right now, we have active Israel flights right now. We are getting people out of Israel and bringing them Floridians back home right now. And so that's one of our things that we're doing. Chief, give me a good question else. Oh, all right. I got one. Last year, or 2 years ago, what was the first storm that came through that affected this woman's office right here? 2 years ago. Started with an I. Ho! Ian shouted out from the cheap seats right here. Yes. There you go. So, folks, we are here to support from the state. We are here to support our counties. All emergencies are always locally led. My recovery counterpart is Elizabeth Kaysen. She cannot be with us today. And she's the other part. So there's two of us here representing all of Central Florida. So if you ever have an emergency, remember, call Chief Avery 311 is your CIO line. So if you guys ever need information and something bad is happening and you need to know, she's got a whole communication section that's 311 from any phone. And you can find out where shelters are. You can find out where to get ice, water, anything. We'll take care of that for you guys. Anybody have any questions for the state before I bounce back to my area? Cool. Thank you guys very much.
All right, just wanted to tell everybody thank you for coming out today. Please thank your vendors as you're going around and enjoy the event. Thank you.